The bodybuilder at its root is concerned with self-development through self-mastery.
Everybody's on steroids. Everybody.
Look at the guys in the Olympia stage, and you're hitting a pose, and then you're like...
When it comes to talking about what choice should be made, it's that unenhanced bodybuilding is the way to go.
This is time right now for natural bodybuilding to grow, where everybody's seeing that health is the most important thing.
Well, first of all, it's great to see you, man. We spoke about probably like a year ago, our last interview.
Man, has it been that long?
Maybe like 10 months ago, or something like that. You know what I mean?
Okay.
How was your 2020, man? It's been how was it for you? It's been crazy for everybody, but how was it for you?
Oh boy. Well, I mean, I had some ups and downs. Like business-wise, business was great. You know, I had the scare back in May, but you know, the year really was a good year. Other than that, I mean, that's kind of a downer. But overall, man, I would say everything went well. Business as well. Life is good. You know, luckily I made it through that little scare, but everything's good now.
Can you? I know you addressed it already, but can you tell me what actually happened? Did you have a heart attack or something like what happened exactly?
Yeah, so I had a blood clot that traveled to my heart, and it lodged in the left anterior descending artery, which is the Widowmaker. That's like the worst place you want it to go. So it blocked that 100%, and yeah, so it was real serious. I'm not even gonna play it off like it wasn't serious. It was very serious, but luckily, you know, I made it through, and things are good now. But it was definitely scary.
Mm-hmm. And did you have any symptoms leading up to it? You know,
Zero.
So nothing at all. Just came as a complete shock.
Yeah, it was in May, so that's back when, you know, we were locked down here in Ohio, and so there were no gyms open or anything. So I was in a little garage gym just doing a light workout, and all of a sudden my chest started hurting, and I thought, man, that's weird. And then my arm started hurting, and I was like, okay, this is serious. So yeah, I mean, no clues or anything, and just happened.
Damn, that's crazy. I heard that actually one of the symptoms of a heart attack is when you get pain in your arm, right? So that was actually happened to you.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it was true for me. It was definitely true for me. Yeah.
So, what happened after that? I mean, were you in the hospital for a while? You know, were you out of it? Like, were you unconscious or?
Well, they took me straight into the cath unit, and what they do there is they put a little, we'll just call it a wire into your radial artery here in your wrist. They run it up into your heart, and they look at your heart, and they could see that I had the blockage, and so they can surgically take it out, which is a little bit dangerous. And they opted to just give me a blood thinner, a heparin IV. So that took about a day and a half, and then it broke up the clot. And I ended up leaving on Thursday. So Thursday night I was at home. But they took good care of me. And when I got home, you know, I had some visits with the doctors later, and the doctor that, you know, they assigned me to, and his prognosis was really bad. He said, you know, you've got your heart function, your ejection fraction is so low that you could go into a cardiac arrhythmia and you could die at any second. So we should get a defibrillator implanted in your heart, you know, one of those metal pieces in your heart. And he said, you've got a blood clot in the bottom of your heart because that part of your heart was damaged, the apex of the left ventricle. So the blood just sits there, and that can travel, can give you a stroke or whatever. So basically he was saying you can die at any time. And, you know, obviously I took that pretty hard, and it was pretty depressing to hear that. But then, you know, I came to the conclusion that no matter what he said was I was going to have to live my life, right? I mean, I can't just stop living. So I got a family that depends on me.
Yeah.
And so I just, you know, rehab myself back slowly. And I changed doctors, and now like the blood clot went away and the ejection fraction is going back up. It's still not good, but it's going back up, and I don't have any limitations. Like I still train hard. I do my cardio, I do my weights, and, you know, I don't really struggle with anything. I mean, honestly, I feel really good. So, so everything's looking up now.
So what caused the initial blood clot was the reason why all this happened, right?
Right, that's correct.
So did they tell you what caused it, and also like, I mean, I want to make sure that other people kind of also use that as a cautionary story. You know what I'm saying? And then like, how do you prevent this from happening?
Hang on for 1 second. My dog is chewing my laptop cord. Hang on for 1 second. Okay.
You got it.
All right. So he's a puppy. He's out of control. So there's a lot of things they look at. One of the things they look at is, did a piece of plaque break off that had built up in your blood vessels? And I had a calcium score test done. It's where they put you in a tube. It looks like an MRI tube. They hit you with a bunch of radiation, and they can see the insides of your vessels if they're calcified. And I had almost, not quite, but almost a perfect score. So my blood vessels are, really clear. No issue there. And I did another test. It's called a transesophageal electrocardiogram, where they basically stick a camera down your throat and in your heart and look at your heart. And he said, wow, your valves are perfect. Everything's perfect. You have that damage at the bottom of your heart, but everything else looks good. We don't see anything weird here. I could give you like lots of examples of things they did. They did pretty decent job of checking everything. But the end of the day was, no, we don't know exactly what caused the clot. Mm-hmm. So, and I had a weird thing happen to me in 2005. I think you and I might have briefly talked about that a year or two ago, where I lost my colon, and it was kind of pretty much blood clot that was in the sigmoid part of my colon. So I do have kind of a funky history of blood clotting. So now they have me on blood thinners to prevent that from happening again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's interesting. I have a good friend of mine who had a blood clot issue as well. It originated in his leg and then traveled up to his lung. And also was a dangerous situation. But
very dangerous. Very dangerous. Pulmonary embolism. When
you ask them to explain like what causing it, it's like they say, well, you travel too much sometimes on a plane, like you sit in a position but you know what I'm saying? It's a weird explanation. It seems like nobody's really protected.
It's hard to say. It's hard to say, because one of the doctors has asked me, he's like, do you fly a lot? And I'm, yeah, well, I do, but right. I mean, it's just hard to say, right? I mean, who knows? And then, they all are trying to come up with that. And they know there's a lot of things you can test in your blood, mm-hmm. both arteries and veins, arterial tests and venous tests where they can test. And they ran most of that stuff. They didn't run all of it, but there's factors they can test for, coagulation, how your blood clots and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, they just didn't really know. And, I'd probably be more concerned if I wasn't on blood thinners, but since they have me on a little bit of a blood thinner, they've already cut the dose down. But since they have me on that, I feel pretty good about where I'm at.
Mm-hmm. But I'm sure well, I'm not sure, but did doctors tell you, cardiologists, you have to stop lifting heavy? Did they tell you this or no?
Not really. What they said was just to make sure that I prioritize cardio ahead of the weights. And, so I was kind of intermittent with my cardio. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to say I wasn't doing it, but I'm not going to say I was doing it all the time either. It was just kind of intermittent. So I've gotten much better cardio-wise on my schedule. Now, the thing about my weight training is I kind of enjoy training fast and really hard. So I've always had pretty good cardiorespiratory endurance anyway. I realize that's still a little different. It's not the exact same. Mm-hmm. But, for me, cardio, it's really hard for me to get my pulse up to over 110. It's really hard for me to get over to 110. I have to go so hard it turns into almost like anaerobic exercise. It's almost like I'm doing leg presses. Mm. And even now, we were joking last week. We were doing a set and my partner's always like, man, you're never even out of breath. And so I did a really hard set on legs, and they tested my pulse, and it was 77. And they're just like, what? I'm like, now I take beta blockers too, which slows it down. But still, it's always been my heart is in really good shape. My cardiorespiratory system's in pretty good shape. I used to do a lot of swimming and walking the dogs that I've always had. But so anyways, the doctors were like, no, you can keep doing that, but just come back slowly. So that's what I did. I came back really slow. I made sure I didn't do the Valsalva maneuver, where you hold your breath and you drive the weight up. I made sure I breathed normally. Right. And I just took my time, over the course of months. I just worked my way back up slowly until I felt right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So after you got out of the hospital, right, relatively fast. I mean, how was the recovery for you? Kind of like getting back to normal. Was that a process, or did you feel normal, or did you feel like you were lacking something?
I felt super tired.
Yeah.
Like I just wanted to sleep all day. And the doctor made an interesting observation. He said basically your heart, the stress it's just endured is like you just ran a triathlon and you sat down, drank a glass of water, and you ran another triathlon. He said that's the stress that your heart is undergoing.
Mm-hmm.
He told me to not lift weights for a while, and I took 16 days off out of the gym. I think the normal is 3 to 6 months. But when I went back in, I was just doing really light stuff. I wasn't straining at all. But I was really tired. Maybe that was the medications. Maybe it was the stress of everything that happened.
Yeah.
But it was definitely a process. I didn't get out of the hospital and didn't just show up the next day like, okay, now what do we? It was a process. I was super, super tired for a little while.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's interesting because I really want to kind of like, to get like people, like a warning. You know what I mean? Like, what do you not do, or like how to prevent this? And it seems like in your case, you didn't do anything for it to really, for it to happen. It's almost like a bad luck situation. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I mean, you're going to get the common thing. I mean, people are going to comment and they're going to say, yeah, it's all the drugs you take and all that stuff. I had been taking TRT test for 3 years now. I haven't competed since 2017.
Right.
And, the first doctor I talked to, he's like, well, maybe it's the test. And I said, well, 150 milligrams a week, I mean, that's a true TRT dose. And I said, why aren't tens of thousands of guys having blood clots then?
Right.
If this is what will happen? And he said, well, I'm not really sure. I'm not really educated on this, but you're going to have a lot of people see this video. They're going, oh yeah, it's all the tests and all this stuff. But all I had done, was the TRT test that, since I retired from competing.
Mm-hmm.
And my blood work was good. I mean, I can show you my blood work. It was perfect. And I
saw a video where you break down your blood work with a doctor, actually, when you go through it. And at some point you stopped TRT or something and it went down completely, and then you have to actually start doing it.
Yeah, I mean, the doctor, he's like, well, I don't really like you taking that testosterone. And I said, it's a minimal amount to keep me normal. It's not to gain an advantage over anybody.
Right.
It's just to be normal. And I said, I'm going to do something really stupid. I'm going to prove it to you, and I'm going to stop taking it for 30 days.
Mm-hmm.
He said, okay, let's do that. So I didn't take any for 30 days. And I got my, I'll have to send this to you, but I had my test tested after 30 days. Mm-hmm. And I think it was 51. Now, to give you an idea of what a normal test level is between 250 and 750, right? Nanograms per deciliter. Mm-hmm. Mine was like 51.
Mm-hmm.
It was almost non-existent.
Yeah.
And again, I felt super sleepy, super tired. And if you actually do the research, low testosterone predisposes you to another heart attack or to more issues.
Okay.
So I showed him that, and I said, this is what happens. I said, this is 30 days. I feel terrible, and I have no test levels in my body. And he said, well, it'll come back up eventually. And I said, actually, I've been down that road many, many times where I've stopped, for various reasons, for 6 months, for a year, whatever. And I said, it ain't coming back. Like, for health reasons, I really need to, to do this minimal amount. So I'm glad that I could share that, though, because, there's always that, oh, you did this to yourself and did all this stuff. So, people can believe what they want, but that's kind of how it all unfolded.
Yeah, for sure. But I love the fact that you bounced back, and you training people, you training yourself, you know what I mean? And your outlook is always great, you know what I'm saying?
Well, what do you do? Do you just roll over and just, feel sorry for yourself? I mean, I did when it happened because, like I said, I put so much into being healthy. Like, I put a lot into it.
Yeah.
So, then for me to have something like that happen, it's just like, man, you get into the why me, and that's that's something I tell other people not to do. Don't get into the why me, and don't feel sorry for yourself. And that's how I felt. So, but the doctors at subsequent visits with my new doctor, he said, man, the rest of your heart tissue is super healthy, and it has like your normal weight training, all the life stuff you do has no stress on your heart at all. It's in really good shape. So I'm feeling optimistic now. You never know. I felt great too before I had that happen. So you never know, but you just keep staying positive and keep moving forward.
But I want to wish you the best, man. I know you're gonna, no matter what, you're gonna make it, man.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So how do you feel about COVID and this whole debate that's happening still? Because some states, they still have the gyms closed. Like California, I think some are open, some are closed, but it depends on the state. But how do you feel about this whole debate? Like, should the gyms be open during the pandemic or closed? And how do you feel about it?
It's tough, man, because you can talk to a group of people that haven't really been impacted by it, and they can say one thing, and then you can talk to some people that have been impacted by it, and they have very strong feelings.
Right.
So I don't think anybody can say there's no such thing as COVID. I don't think anybody can say that. I think the reason why there's so many trust issues is because of so many deaths being attributed to COVID that maybe weren't directly caused by COVID. COVID exacerbated it.
Sure.
And I think statistically you can see who the people are that are most at risk. And I think, like, from my perspective, I think the good move would have been to protect the people who are at risk, who obviously were, older people with multiple issues already. It seemed like there's a couple different risk factors that really put you in harm's way. But I think there should have been a real emphasis on protecting those people. Like you saw in New York, what happened in the nursing homes there. Obviously, those people weren't protected, and that's all over the news. Actually, that's all over the news right now. The deaths in New York were actually undercounted big time. It seems like maybe there was a cover-up over that. But I think the emphasis shouldn't have been on closing so much stuff down, and they should have put that kind of energy into protecting the people who are at risk. But I think it's a little silly to say there's no such thing. Doesn't. I mean, that's silly, right?
Sure.
But I also think it's a little silly to have the entire state of California or whatever shut down too. I also think that's silly. Why don't you protect the people who need to be protected and, go from there? So, I mean, that's my perspective.
No, I agree with you. I think the main question here is, were the gyms, or should the gyms be considered to be essential businesses? You know what I'm saying?
Well, I mean, my opinion is there's been some studies on this, and they showed that people going to gyms were no more. Hold on, that's my dog again. He's yanking my computer around. But I'm pretty sure that I've seen a couple different studies at least showing that people that went, there was no widespread cases from people going to the gym. And like the gym where I train at, we don't wear a mask or anything. There hasn't been one case. There hasn't been one issue since day one.
Oh, really? You're not required a mask in your gym?
No, we go in and we take precautions. Like every time I go in, I'll sanitize my hands. Yeah. Then after you use equipment, you sanitize equipment. And obviously, if you're sick, you're not supposed to go in there. But we haven't had one issue ever. Okay. I coach football. I don't know if you know this, but I coach football. Yeah. We finished up our youth league season, and we didn't have one case. Zero. In the whole league, in the entire league. Now you're talking about something else too. You're talking about kids, which is a whole nother discussion in itself. But I personally don't see the issue with gyms because there's no data to suggest that. I mean, if somebody can show me some data that says, look how bad it is when people train in gyms, then I'll change my mind. But I haven't seen that. I've seen the opposite. And and there's a lot of things that are considered essential. Let's be honest here. I mean, they're going to a gym is probably a lot higher up on the priorities system than maybe going to a liquor store or something. So
right.
I think what's been done to gyms is bad. I think it's terrible. I don't agree with it. I think with anything else, you got to be smart and take precautions. And if people are coming in and they're sanitizing their hands and they're doing all those things, I mean. Like I said, if we would have shut down gyms here right where I'm at, what would have it accomplished? Nothing. Zero. There hasn't been any cases anyway. Mm. So, I don't know. So it's frustrating, but I've seen zero evidence to suggest that we should shut down gyms.
But it's interesting. Some people face prosecution, like literally going to court for this.
I've seen that in the news. That's crazy.
In the news, and also Bradley Martin, we work closely with him, and he's facing, he's been to court 3 times already.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy. People work their whole. I grew up in a very blue collar family, right? My grandma was a cook in a restaurant. People work their whole lives to have a business,
right?
And then it's taken away from them. in a heartbeat. And the people making the rules don't even follow the rules. Look at all these governors making rules about you can't do this, you can't do this, and they don't even follow the rules themselves. They'll say you can't go out and have dinner, and then there'll be a picture of them having dinner at a restaurant somewhere not wearing a mask. I'm like, you just said, speaking of California, you got these governors that just don't follow the rules. They live in their own little ivory towers. They don't understand what it's like for the common man. But they all say, well, we're one of you. No, you're not. You're not one of us.
How about a vaccine? Have you done any research on the COVID vaccine, and do you feel like it's safe to take?
I haven't done enough research to have an educated opinion on it. I'm not going to take it personally.
No.
But I'm not going to tell other people not to take it either. I just haven't done enough research to form an educated opinion on it. I won't take the regular flu vaccine. I mean, if this was like polio or something like that, then sign me up for a vaccine. But when something's got a 99.99 something percent, rate that you're going to live, I'm not going to. It's funny. I took the regular flu shot maybe 15 years ago, and I got maybe the sickest I'd ever been in my life. And I was like, I'm never taking another vaccine again unless it's for something like polio.
Because you got really sick, right? You got really sick after it?
Real sick. I'm not going to take it personally, but I think the people that are at risk should definitely consider taking it. But again, I just don't have an educated opinion on it. I haven't seen all the data on how safe it is or not safe. You hear stuff on news, but I'm very when I see stuff on the news, like I'm very hesitant to trust what they say because they all have an angle. They all have something that they're trying to push an agenda for somebody. Mm-hmm. And very rarely do I think the news is out to really help you. I think they're out to create just widespread emotion, panic, whatever it is. They're trying to play on your emotions to really get you into things rather than just present facts. Mm-hmm. It's interesting if you look at like the CDC and the WHO and all these facts or all these people who supposedly give us the facts. Mm-hmm. The stories have changed so much, which is fine. You have a virus that you haven't seen before, so people learn and things change. Mm-hmm. But you get the news that grabs on to one part of that, and then when things change, they don't mention it. They're like, maybe a small percentage or a large percentage of these deaths weren't directly just to COVID. Okay, well, why didn't the news talk about that? It's gloom and doom. Like, just give us the facts. Just give us what you know. And if things change, just tell us. If it's more deadly than what we thought, just tell us. Hey, man, this is even worse than what we thought. But just tell us. And I don't feel like I can really trust the news. So, I've got some good doctor friends that are very sharp, and they do understand all this stuff. So I lean on them more. If I need an opinion on it, I'll go to them. I won't go to, CNN or whatever it is. Right. I won't do it.
Do you think there's a possibility, like, let's say, if the government really wants everybody to have the vaccine done, right? They're gonna create like some kind of a pass. You know what I mean? That in order to travel, you need to present that you're vaccinated, or even to go to the gym that you've been vaccinated. Or without that, you can't go places or travel.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hearing that they're considering things like that, and like, wow, man, you want to force healthy people to do this? Like, that doesn't feel right. There's a lot of this stuff there's a slippery slope, right? Mm-hmm. So you might have someone that says, well, they're just trying to protect you. That's the only reason why they want you to have the vaccine. Well, then, so they move the needle a little bit. Well, we're going to make people do this. And then it's like, okay, now we've shifted over to here. Now there's something else they want us to do. Okay, now they've shifted us over here. And then, 10 years later, you're over here, and you're like, man, how did I get over here? I just feel like that's a slippery slope, demanding people get a vaccine for something that has a 99.9 something percent success, rate where you're going to live and be just fine. Mm-hmm. How can that feel right to anybody?
I hear it. Okay, let's talk about the Olympia 2020. So first of all, you've been obviously part of the Shaun Clarida success, right? Are you part of the team, Shaun Clarida, right? You and
yeah. So Shaun, I've been handling his training for about 7 years now.
Mm-hmm. And you work together with another coach, right? I think Matt, or something like that. His name is?
Matt handles his nutrition, and I handle his training strategy.
So talk about that. Talk about the strategy and why this year was the year he won. And sort of like, was it like every year you guys been moving
It
towards
wasn't
that?
like an overnight thing. You know, anybody that's watched Shaun, they have seen him get a little better and a little better and a little better.
Mhm.
And, you know, with Shaun every year, it's just been, what are some things that we can change? You know, one year it might be, you know, let's really focus on X, you know, you're somewhere in your back or your chest. And then the next year it's like, well, you know, let's really focus on your hamstrings. It's just been an evaluation every year on where we can put a little bit more effort. And now we got another plan going into this year's Olympia. So, you know, he was just here training and we talked about it. And so now we have another plan. Okay, how can we get even better? So with Shaun, it's just his success is just because of his it's consistency and hard work. You know, we're in our industry right now, there's a large group of people that want to, you know, say that people train too hard and they're going too far. They're training with too much intensity. And I don't like that. I don't like that at all. Like, if you want to apply that to beginners and intermediates, I'm with you. But when you're talking about a guy like Shaun, for example, who's very advanced, okay, so now you're going to tell a guy like Shaun, who's maxing out his potential, you're going to tell him that you're doing too much. You need to back off. That's too much. Like, it's a little silly, but Shaun has stayed the course over all these years. He's trained really hard. You know, we're always talking about his health. You know, one of the things that I take a lot of pride in working with people in terms of training is keeping them healthy. You won't see my guys getting injured. And we're always watching, you know, how do your elbows feel? How's your lower back feel? And sometimes we have to make adjustments. All right, well, let's cut out the heavy bent over barbell rows. It's just not working for your lower back, you know. So Shaun's success is just purely just based on his consistency, his hard work, and he just doesn't let up. I mean, the guy just never lets up. He'll be better next year. Well,
So-
this year. It's 2021, but he'll be better this year.
The judges told me that, you know, a lot of the judges told me that basically his conditioning was superior this year. You know, so what's the secret to achieving such level of conditioning? Like, what can you take me through his
Well,
workout?
I
What did you
mean,
guys do?
I worked with Terence Ruffin too, handling his diet, and then with Terence, I don't handle his training. A guy named Joe Bennett does, but I handle his nutrition. So with Terence, he was, you know, you could make a good case that he was the most separated and strided and hardest guy in the contest, and he got second. Like, who picked him to beat Breon? Nobody. Everybody said it's the Breon and Chris show.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. I thought the same thing.
Everybody
100%,
did,
100%.
you know, and Chris and Breon are awesome guys, by the way. They're awesome guys. They're both awesome champions. But I was getting so annoyed every week. It was, you know, people betting, you know, is it Chris or Breon? And rightfully so. But, you know, I sent Terence a message and I said, man, we got to take one of these guys out. Like, we got to get you in the top two.
Yeah.
And so this was like 4 weeks out. He said, really? You think it's possible? And I said, yeah, man, I think it is possible. So when they had prejudging, you know, when Terence was standing next to Breon, when prejudging was over, you know, Terence was really happy. It's obvious at that point he's in the top three. I said, you know, you beat him in several poses. I'm not going to say all poses, but you did beat him in some of those poses. And Terence said, really? You think so? I said, yeah, I think you beat him in some poses. And then he tightened up for the finals, got even better. And then at the finals, he was lights out. He was really good. So, you know, I'm really looking forward to later this year, whenever the Olympia is, and seeing those guys again. But, you know, the conditioning, like, it wasn't anything fancy. It's just grinding. It's getting a little better every week. You can't really have setbacks.
Is it more of a cardio thing, or is it more of a changing up the training, the way you train?
I mean, at the end of the day, it's an equation. It's are you burning more calories than you're taking in? I mean, at the end of the day, it's that equation. If you want to reduce your calories to get into that deficit, cool. If you want to add more cardio to burn an extra 100, 200 calories to get into that deficit, cool. Whatever you need to do. I will say this, with cardio, like, you got to be careful, because if you do so much, you start to break your body down, your joints start to hurt, it impacts your recovery. So I like to do the majority of my dieting by reducing calories. You know, and then what happens is eventually you get to the point of no return. Well, you can't really keep taking calories down now, or they'll start losing a lot of muscle. So then that's when you'll hear people talking about refeeds and having a weekend where they eat higher calories. It's strategic and it's a smart thing to do. But at the end of the day, man, it's just that equation. Are you burning more than you're taking in?
Right, I see what you're saying. What is your general rule on cardio? Like for somebody who's training to compete, let's say, right? Is it a morning cardio, empty stomach cardio?
There's I don't think there's any benefit to fasted cardio, for example. You're burning calories. That's all you're doing. If you can say as a percentage of energy, you're burning more fat, but at the end of the day, if you've eaten more calories than you burn, you're not going to burn any fat. Even though you were burning more fat at that point, you got to look from the perspective of the whole day. So as long as you're doing cardio, it doesn't matter. In fact, if you're fasted and you're dragging, it might help you to put a little bit in you so you can do the cardio harder with more intensity. But, then people talk about, well, what about steady state versus high intensity cardio? Well, high intensity cardio, you got to be really careful because that can cut into your recovery. So if you're doing something really hard, like you'll see these guys on spin bikes going crazy really hard, which is excellent HIIT cardio. But if you overdo it, now it's just like another leg session. It makes it hard to recover. So as a general rule, I would rather somebody do more of that high intensity stuff further away from the contest when they got more calories in them. But as they get closer to the contest, I'm not trying to beat their joints up. I'm not trying to beat their body up. So I'm using what I think is the right amount without eating up muscle and tearing their body up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So when you're referring to HIIT cardio, that's basically when you do very fast on a bike and then you slow down, right? And you do like intervals of like very, very fast or like very heavy resistance,
it's an intense interval. So normally you have intervals where you might go 30 seconds pretty hard. Mm-hmm. Then maybe you do 30 seconds or 2 minutes, whatever, not real hard. Well, HIIT cardio is that interval is really hard. It's all out. So when I hear people say, well, I'm doing HIIT cardio, I do a minute on, a minute off. No, you're not. You can't go that hard for a minute. You can't go all out for a minute. You might go 10 seconds, 15 seconds, maybe 20 seconds. But when you truly go all out, like all out everything you got, you can only maintain that for, so long.
Yeah. So men's open, how did you feel about the placings in men's open? And obviously, I know you're friends with Brendan, right? You go friends with Brendan Curry.
For me personally, I really wanted to see Brandon and Rami end up 1 and 2, just for the simple reason they're both great guys. Mm-hmm. They're just great guys. Mm-hmm. They're both family guys. I don't think people understand Rami has kids and how good of a family guy he is. Like, he's an awesome guy. Mm-hmm. But I always want the best guy to win, right? That's the fairest thing is for the best guy to win. So when they came out, Phil made a real good first impression, and then I thought Brandon made a great first impression. Rami came out, and I thought, man, he looks really, really good. And then as they posed, Steve worked them really hard. Mm-hmm. He worked those guys really hard. Mm-hmm. And, you're watching it, and you're like, he's posing them so hard, you're sitting there thinking, who's going to fade first? Who's going to be the first one to fade? And then Phil started getting tired, and you could see, his stomach moving. And Brandon faded a little bit, but Rami got even better. Like, you could tell Rami had been working on his posing with Dennis James because he didn't fade an ounce. And then I think what really finished it off was his poses from his side. He looked so unbelievable from the side in the side shots. Mm-hmm. And at that point, it was like, okay, Rami's going to win. We'll see what happens with Brandon and Phil. Probably Brandon edged him out. And then at the finals, it was the same thing, except all of a sudden Hadi looked unreal. At the finals, all of a sudden Hadi had lines everywhere. He was the first guy to pose, and I was like, man, he looks amazing. He was strided from head to toe. If Hadi would have looked like that at prejudging, Hadi could have been up as far as second place, actually. So I thought the judging was right on, man. I don't disagree with any call they made. I thought it was great. I thought it was great to see Akeem get some love. He looked awesome. Mm-hmm. I'm excited about this year already. That was the most exciting Olympia I've seen in a long time. I mean, I've really enjoyed it. I thought it was awesome.
Yeah, for sure. So Akeem Williams, I spoke to him the other day, right? So in a way, again, he's one of those guys that people, just like Terence, right? Nobody expected him to do that well.
Yeah.
Almost like an underdog, situation. But do you feel like he's a serious contender for maybe this year or maybe the following year?
Well, I mean, in a way, he's kind of like Rami when you think about it. Because what have people always said about Rami? He's so big. If he just gets really hard, he'll be hard to beat. Well, Akeem's kind of the same way. He's a monster. He's a big guy. He has a lot of muscle. And he was in great shape for the Olympia, but I could see him being even better, and I could see him definitely leapfrogging some people. I don't see 6th as his ceiling at all. I think he could definitely do better.
So, William, I want to ask you about William Bonac, right? He's a great bodybuilder. He always delivers. He's always like, the top 5.
What's in shape? Yeah.
Always top 5, like almost guaranteed, right? So what do you think he needs to do to win? Like, what do you think he needs to improve in order for him to be the champion? Because he definitely is champion quality, like bodybuilder, right? Like, what do you think he needs to do? And obviously, other people got to come off, for him. But like, what do you think he needs to do specifically in order to advance to the champion? You
get to a point in this sport where when everybody's maxing out their genetics, their muscle, it comes almost down to structure. And William has so much muscle on his body. He shows up in great condition. I've seen his legs a little off sometimes, though. His legs aren't as big sometimes at some shows, last year in particular. But I think Williams, it's just the other guy's structure is better. I don't think William can, he can't change his structure. He can and he's only going to be able to add on so much muscle to the way he's built. I love the way he's built. He looks like a little cartoon character. Like, I remember competing one show that he was in. I was in the 212s and he was in the open. And I remember standing behind him in a pump-up room. And I remember thinking he looked like a Marvel superhero. He looked like a comic book character, which I like that look myself. Yeah. I don't see him getting back up into that top 2 or 3 at the Olympia.
Really?
Not because I don't think William's awesome. I think it's just structure. I just think his structure. Well, and if the other guys come off, of course you can always move up. Right. And who knows what Phil's going to do. I think Hottie's going to be there. I think Rami's going to be there. I think Brandon's still going to be there. Brandon can improve more too. I think if you talk to Brandon, he would tell you that too.
Do you think he was worse 2020 than he was in 2019 when he won? Or do you think he improved but just Rami was better? Like, what do you think? In his case.
Well, Rami was just so far and away the best he's ever been. Like, we've never seen Rami look like that.
Yeah.
So the credit goes, Rami, like, Brandon didn't lose the show. Rami won the show. Rami just came in at his best. I thought Brandon had made some improvements, actually. I thought the lines in his legs were a little better. I thought he was in good condition. He still had, when he walked out and they had that shadow, he still had that crazy cartoon shape look to his body, too. Yeah. So I think I read Brandon saying he wished, maybe next year he'll come in a little bigger. But I didn't see him as being flat or anything like that. He looked pretty daggone big to me. I just like to see Brandon with just a little bit more legs, a little bit more hamstring, a little bit more separation in his legs. But, I can see Brandon right up there in that top 2 again next year.
So what about classic division? It's interesting. I saw comparisons between 2019 and 2020. And you definitely can see that Chris Bumstead improved a lot. He put on a lot of muscle. Huge difference. Yep. It's obviously just photos, you know what I mean? But I'm sure you would agree with that. Like, it's a huge improvement. Yeah,
Chris is phenomenal, man. And he had some health problems last year that, caused him to be a little off. And man, how cool would it be to win the Olympia when you're off, right? Man, that would be so cool. But Chris is a great guy. Like, he's a fantastic guy. I've met him. I've talked to him a lot of times. He's so mature for his age. I think he's only like 25, 26 years old, something like that. He's so mature for his age. I think Chris is awesome. People said, is Chris beatable? But he is beatable. He is beatable. I think
Terence Breon was unbeatable. Honestly, 3 years ago, I thought Breon was completely unbeatable.
Nobody in that class is unbeatable. If you look purely from a classic perspective, like if you look at like classic poses, and you look at how Terence looks in those poses, who's better than Terence? I don't think anybody's better than Terence. Mm-hmm. Having said that, Chris has a big structure and he's got a lot of muscle and he looks awesome. Mm-hmm. But what's going to happen if Terence puts on 5 pounds of muscle, 7 pounds of muscle, and he takes that and gets even more crazy looking and he keeps that shape? So I don't think Chris is unbeatable, but I think he's a tremendous champion. And I think he's a great guy. I'm very happy for him.
Sure.
And I don't know what Breon's planning on doing. It's not like Breon is out of the picture either. The kid's awesome. He's
amazing.
He's amazing. So I don't think you can just write him off either. I think it's a mistake to say, maybe Breon wants to go to 212s. I don't know, but I think it's a mistake for people to say, well, Breon's done. I wouldn't say that. Like, I mean, he just maybe a slightly bit off, but
no, he's amazing. I think I think it's more of a mental thing. You know, he has to now, you know, kind of go back and figure out the strategy, right? But I mean, he's still the top contender, obviously.
Oh, he's phenomenal. That whole class was phenomenal. Like, I remember the first couple guys that came out.
Yeah.
I was sitting there and I was thinking, oh my God, these guys are awesome. These guys are monsters. Mm-hmm. And yeah, you know, I was a little nervous actually before Terence came out. I was like, man, these guys are so big. You know, Terence is 175 pounds. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking, man, I hope they're not, you know, I hope they don't dwarf him. But once they started posing, I was like, okay, he's good. But I'd be lying if I'd said I wasn't a little nervous. Right. But once he got out there and he started posing, he was good. But that class is loaded. I love that Wesley Visser's kid. I think he's got a ton of potential. Mm-hmm. The guy that got 5th place, big dude, huge dude. I love that guy. I think he's got a ton of potential. There's some really good guys in that class. Yeah, for sure.
So what's going to be Terence's strategy for this year? Is it getting bigger, basically? Getting more massive?
Yeah, you always got to maintain. When he's got God-gifted lines. Like, he's got lines that, I mean, are amazing. So it's not, though, 20 pounds of muscle in Terence. Well, first of all, he would make the weight. But it's, you know, for him, it's a little bit more muscle in his upper body, a little bit more V-taper. And, I mean, if you saw how much improved Terence did from the Arnold to the Olympia, it was amazing. Like, the Arnold, he got 2nd place. Fellow beat him. But from the Arnold to the Olympia, Terence made tremendous progress. Now he's got a year to do that. If he can do that again, if Terence can go what he looked like at the Olympia this year and make that same jump, he's going to be deadly next year. I mean, he will be absolutely deadly.
Do you think, you know, I asked Steve Weinberger the same question and a lot of other people, right, obviously, and they all say no, it's anybody, just like you said, anybody can be beaten, right?
Absolutely.
But do you feel like Chris Bumstead has that the height aspect, you know, that plays into the illusion of just being more dominant on stage? Do you think that plays a role into it?
Yeah, it does. It does. He's got that big structure, the wide structure. He's got a small waist. He's very gifted, too. He's got God-given genetics as well. He strikes me as a hard worker. So, yeah, he's going to be hard to beat. You know, I don't want to, you know, just because I'm saying he's beatable, that doesn't mean he's got all these flaws. That's not what I'm saying, because he is still going to be hard to beat.
Well, a lot of people said that his back was his weak point, but do you feel like after seeing him in 2020, do you feel like he completely brought that up to a point where
it's not his weak point anymore? Right, no. I don't feel like his back's the weak point now.
Right. Exactly. And let's talk about 212 again. So 212, obviously, you know, Shaun Clarida, you know, your client is not a champion. But it was. Did you feel like it was close between? Kamal is also a great competitor, obviously. Do you feel like
Kamal
it was
great.
Very close?
Kamal, I told you I talked to Terence about 4 weeks after the show, and I said, hey, we got to get you in that top 2. So Shaun, you know, probably about the 4-week out point, you know, he called and he said, what do you think? And I said, it's going to be between you and Kamal. I'd seen, you know, Kamal train with Flex in Florida. I seen how much bigger he was up to the chest, and the year before when Kamal won, I felt like he won it on condition. I felt like he was razor sharp, particularly if you remember when he hit his ab and thigh pose. It was lights out, razor sharp. And I seen that he'd put on a lot of mass. So I was thinking, man, he's going to be right there again. And I knew how much mass Shaun had put on because I'd been watching him, right? So I told Shaun, it's going to be between you and Kamal, for sure. And so after prejudging, like when they walked out of prejudging, your eyes went right to Shaun. They went right to him. He looked awesome. But Kamal looked awesome too. So me personally, I felt like Kamal beat Shaun in the rear double bicep pose. I don't really feel like he beat him in any other poses. I felt like Shaun edged him out in the other poses. So I felt it was close, but I felt like, you know, if I was judging, Shaun would have won. And I saw Shaun after prejudging, and I said, well, I told him the same thing I'm telling you. He beat you in the rear double bicep pose, but I don't think he beat you in other poses. I think you're gonna squeak this one out. Mm-hmm. So again, I thought the judges got it right. It's a close call. But Kamal, I think Kamal's coming back. I'd look for him to be tough again. So I think they're going to have another rematch this year. You know, we'll see. There's another guy that could welcome himself to the party too. That's Keon. Keon has the genetic structure, maybe the best genetic structure in the whole 212 class. Now, how that looks next to Shaun in prime condition, who knows? But I think Keon, I see the three kind of being, Keon and Kamal and Shaun.
He was in Classic, right? Wasn't he in Classic also?
He was, yeah.
He was, right? Yeah. He was in Classic. He changed, I think, actually to 2020, though. That's when he changed to 212.
Yeah.
So do you think Shaun can improve even more? Is there room for improvement there?
I think so. It's not, you don't get Shaun, you don't say, okay, let's pack on 10, 15 pounds of muscle, because his frame is a little bit slight. But what you can do with Shaun is you can improve, for example, we're working on this V-taper. We're trying to make the V shape even better. So, we're doing a lot of training for his upper lats, his teres. We're trying to get some deep tissue work done on his subscap and his serratus, so everything moves well. We're keeping his rotator cuff healthy. We're doing all this stuff to keep his V-taper. We want to improve the V-taper. If you look at Shaun's mass, like muscle per square inch on his body, he's a mini Ronnie Coleman. He really is. So now what happens when you take that mass and you make the shape even better? So, our strategy isn't for him to turn into a giant block. Our strategy is to just make him take that mass and just keep improving on his shape. I think if we do that, I think he's going to be hard to beat. That's all I'll say.
John, I want to ask you a couple of functional questions, for the bodybuilders out there who are training. So, in your opinion, in order to grow muscle, is it better to do lighter weight and more reps, or heavier weight and lower amount of reps? In your opinion, what's the right approach?
Well, you can do it either way. The bottom line is, okay, I'm trying to think how I can break this down as simple as possible. So you have a lot of muscle fibers that fire. When you use heavy weight, you use a lot of muscle fibers. They all get involved because they got to produce force to move that heavy weight. If you're using light weights, you're not using all those muscle fibers. But if you go to the point where you fatigue those fibers, then it has to call other fibers into play to help. And then when you fatigue those fibers, you have to call other fibers in to help. So you can get, all the muscle, they call them high threshold motor units, low threshold motor units, all that stuff. You can get all your muscle fibers to fire with lighter weight if you go to fatigue. Here's the problem. Think about doing a hard set of 30 reps. All right? How does it feel when you're at 20? You're burning like fire. Right? So what do most people do? They just stop. Like, oh my God, that burns so bad. I just stop. I just threw the bar down. All right, for you to get all those muscle fibers that I talked about, you have to go pretty close to failure, if not failure, with a light weight. That's the only way you can engage those muscle fibers. Now, if you're using a heavier weight, the weight's heavy, so you need every muscle fiber firing, to produce enough force to be able to move that way. Now the problem becomes, what can your joints handle? Can the connective tissue handle that? So if someone's out there saying you got to go heavy on everything, well, talk to me in a couple years about how your rotator cuff's feeling, how your lower back's feeling, how your knees are feeling. Those are the guys that are always injured. If you're one of those people that says, no, you can do it all with light weights, okay, I want to see you do those sets of 30 or 25 or 30 reps to failure every single set. See how long you last. See how long you can do that. So to me, the optimal approach is a mix of the two. You can't go heavy all the time, but it's just not practical going light to failure all the time either. So, you've got to find a way to weave those in together for the best benefits.
Does it matter which muscle group you're training for and which method to approach? Like for back, for leg, does it matter, or is it all the same thing pretty much?
Well, if you look at the most fundamental level, mechanical tension is what creates muscle growth. You got to put tension on the muscle. So whether you're using a machine or a dumbbell or a barbell, if you're creating that mechanical tension, it's doing its job. Now there is a difference in muscle fibers a little bit. Like the soleus in your calf is more slow twitch muscle fibers. But I think it's a mistake to go, well, there's this muscle is slow twitch, so I'm going to do all sets of 35. I still think at the end of the day, you want some moderately heavy weight taken through a pretty full range of motion and pretty close to exhaustion. Like at the end of the day, you still got to combine those. You can't use a heavy weight and do a couple reps and then just stop when you could have done 5 more reps. But and you can't just do like little partials all the time. So I think you need that full range of motion most of the time. not all the time, depends on the exercise. You still need the weight to be moderately heavy, and you still got to get kind of close to failure. Again, the biggest pet peeve I have in the industry now is all these people saying, oh, you don't really need to go that hard. That's just silly. So I think if you're encompassing those three things at a fundamental level, you're doing the job.
In your opinion, are there any ways you can boost your testosterone naturally without supplementation, just with certain foods or exercises? Is there a way to do it, you think?
Well, from what I've read in the data, if you have a low level, like for example, healthy fats, if you have a low level of testosterone and you're not consuming enough healthy fats, consuming more healthy fats can raise your test levels. But if you're dealing with someone who already has normal test levels, there's probably not much you can do to make them go even higher. And I'm not a big believer in supplements, given natural supplements, like magically giving you a high test level. I mean, maybe if you're on the bottom end of the spectrum, they might give you a little bit of a lift, but I don't know anybody that's, taken, a normal supplement, a GNC, that claims to be test producing, and all of a sudden they're gaining 10, 20 pounds and they're jacked. And
what about tribulus? Does tribulus contribute to that, in your opinion?
I mean, a lot of people tell you tribulus. I mean, that stuff's been around forever, right? But
right.
I mean, some people use it in their PCTs after they, stop using hormones to help a little bit. But no, I don't think you're going to take tribulus and all of a sudden get these sky high levels of testosterone. I just don't believe it.
What are some of the key mistakes you see bodybuilders, not necessarily obviously pro level, but I'm talking about like amateur guys in the gym make, that you see all the time or you witnessed before? What are the top mistakes that you feel like people should avoid making?
Top mistakes. So there's a couple that come to mind. It's more of a product of social media, and it's trying to stay probably too lean all the time. You got to give your body some calories. You got to be in a caloric excess to really grow. And I think people want to look really good on their sets, on Instagram or whatever. That's great. That's fine, but it's going to make it hard to grow if you're not in a caloric surplus. If you're, maybe even in a deficit, trying to stay that lean. Mm-hmm. Not eating enough, I would say, is a pretty common issue. One of them is buying into all this stuff that you don't really need to train that hard. Buying into that is an issue. I do think that I do feel like there's a little resurgence now, though, in intensity. I think there's enough people talking about intensity and how hard to train that I do see more people going really hard. I look at these guys at all these gyms, at Armbrush Gym and just various gyms, and how hard they're training. And that puts a smile on my face, honestly, because I love to see it. I love to see these guys going hard, Yeah. I mean, when I can tell you the exact thing I saw when I walked to the gym at 12 years old. I saw a guy named Mike laying there doing lying extensions with an easy curl bar and 245s on each side. Oh. And I was like, man, that guy's strong. And I was born in that environment. I trained with a guy today, and his name's James Bowman, and his dad actually trained me when I was in my early 20s. Mm-hmm. And his dad was his name was Nick Bowman. He's the nastiest, meanest trainer, and I loved him because he pushed me hard. I always gravitate to the people who push hard, push me hard. And now it's come full circle, and I'm his son's training with me, and he's a straight beast. I mean, this kid's a beast. Awesome. But I am from that old school where people trained really hard, and I do think there's a lot of people out there that are training really hard now. I don't buy into I don't get into that. Nobody trains hard anymore. That's not true. There are still a lot of people that train really, really hard. They just got to kind of tune out the people that are saying, oh, you're doing too much, right? Mm-hmm. You never know where the line is until you cross it a little. You just don't. And I don't think people even come close to approaching the line. Like, approach the line, and then when you've done a little too much, you'll know it. But you may be capable of a lot more than you're giving yourself credit for. I think when we're well fed, we're recovering well, I think we're capable of a lot. So, those are just a couple things off the top of my head.
Well, John, thank you so much, man. I want to wish you, obviously, the best in your health, and success with your clients and everything, man, and your business. And let's definitely do it again, like 6-7 months, man.
Sounds good. I appreciate your time.
I really appreciate your time, man. Thank you so much. It's always a great interview with you, man.
All righty. Thank you.
Thank you, brother. Take care, man. Bye-bye.
You too. Have a good weekend.